The story begins with a frightened man shivering with fear in a semi-dark room. His friends seem to have gone somewhere, and he's alone with his fear. This guy wanted to go with his buddies, but he decided to stay in his room. It seemed to him that this room was the safest place. A wild terror seemed to consume every cell of this man. He was losing consciousness from the terrible fear. Strange sounds were heard outside the door. Who or what could it be? The dazed boy thought his friends had returned. He hesitantly reached for the doorknob. There was a sepulchral silence in the cluttered, ominous corridor, and there was something dark and shapeless. The man thought he was having an auditory hallucination, but the strange sounds came from outside the door again, and this time they seemed clearer and more real. The boy didn't know where to hide from his fear. He tried to reassure himself that it was all just a play of his wild imagination. Here came someone's ominous silhouette. The doorknob moved. The door slowly opened. Was death really close at hand? Suddenly the man rose from the bed. He thought Matthew Gu had returned. There was no limit to the joy. The boy seemed ready to throw himself into his friend's arms. At least one living soul was with him now. But why did the boy turn into a stone statue? Where did his joy go? What or who did the boy see? Why are his eyes full of wild terror? It's a sunny, beautiful morning. Young Dr. Gu met a pretty girl who wished him a good day. The smarmy Matthew Gu is an intern in the surgical department of Lianhua Hospital. He seems to be really handsome. Dr. Gu is very attractive. Even men often notice this and silently envy him. What a beautiful sunny morning. What new surprises will it bring to our main character? Here comes the first surprise of the morning. The morning is greeted by Matthew Gu with flowers. That's weird. The flower pot fell from somewhere by itself. But people claim that it's the young doctor who caused the pot to fall. Great start to the day. Good thing no one else got hurt except for the flower and the pot. But the young doctor doesn't even pay attention to such surprises. It's too trivial an occurrence. Nothing and no one can ruin Matthew Gu's beautiful mood. Sometimes it's even funny. The flower show continued. Matthew Gu was rushing forward. Behind him, the flower pots were constantly being smashed. The doctor's nickname is God-Awful Star. Sounds like the guy deserved that nickname. After all, not every man can have 18 pots of flowers fall on him in one morning. When Matthew Gu was a young child, he was placed in an orphanage. But the orphanage went bankrupt, so the boy was sent to a kindergarten, which also eventually went bankrupt. Shipwrecks, explosions, destruction, earthquakes, and various accidents followed the boy on his heels. Not a single day was peaceful. Yet he remained alive, safe and sound. The old man said that 18 broken pots is already a clear attempt at premeditated murder. The guy should go to the police. But Matthew Gu replied that it was just a trifle that was not worth paying attention to. The doctor's words surprised the old man. The unconcerned doctor asked the audience to calm down. He saw no reason to panic. People don't really care about other people's grief. Our main character solves all his problems by himself. He is already used to being a strange lone wolf. Will there be no more surprises today? And it will be a calm, beautiful day. However, ill-fated fate continued to taunt the doctor. She can tickle nerves anywhere and any time. The people around them are in shock. They have become spectators of another creepy show with the participation of a failed doctor. Matthew Gu was on the verge of death. He would have been under the wheels of a car. However, playing with death even seemed to amuse the unlucky man. Such carelessness frightened other people. The car came to a stop. There were no casualties. The terrified driver apologized. He said that suddenly the old car's brakes failed. The doctor said he was feeling fine. This calmness surprised the driver too much. He thought the guy was just a psycho who stole the doctor's coat and ran away from the hospital. The agitated driver did not let go of the pedestrian and was greatly concerned about his health. But the doctor tried to disappear from the scene of the road accident as quickly as possible. The good-natured driver was a plumber. He wanted to know where the psychiatric ward was. He needed to fix the sink there. Matthew Gu worked at the hospital, and he knew very well where and what was in the building. He decided to help a plumber get into the psychiatric ward. The psychiatric ward was on the upper floors, so the guys decided to use the elevator. In the plumber's bag was a newspaper. This issue of the newspaper reported that a fire broke out in a high school classroom. 29 people died as a result of the fire. The driver asked how the doctor managed to bounce off the car and save his life. The doctor replied that life can teach us a lot, and in critical moments our self-preservation instincts work perfectly. Suddenly the lights went out. Everything shook. It was like an earthquake. Suddenly the boys saw a message glowing in the darkness. They were kindly invited to play the game Global Collapse. This game begins on planet Earth. There was only one way forward, and that path seemed quite monstrous. Another report has surfaced that 99% of humans do not meet the biological standards of the universe, and this game will help them evolve. Planet Earth is a playground for a survival game. Players can get tickets at special ticket offices to upgrade their characteristics. The guys learned that the game would be completed when the basic characteristics of humans would meet the standards of the universe. Such a game frightened the plumber driver, but the doctor found it quite amusing. In the game, death will not be real, but during defeat, players will lose certain items, in particular, skill points. However, the pain of the players will be quite real and they may fall into a coma. Matthew Gu's posts didn't say anything about whether his death would be real or actual. Why is that? Matthew Gu's life has been one of risk. He was constantly on the verge of life and death, so he wasn't too scared and entered the game. In an instant, the boy was in another world. There was no one around. The doctor called for the plumber driver. He didn't know where to go or how to proceed. The player's information was being processed. Matthew Gu only had to wait patiently. Finally, the data processing was completed. The result was a message that this was the first login to the game. Now you had to create your own character. In particular, enter the player name. Matthew Gu was confused. He didn't know what to name his character. Apparently, a brilliant idea popped into his head. The doctor set about creating his character. Matthew Gu named his player Daddy, but unfortunately that name was already taken. Finally, the player's name has been selected. Scan successfully completed. The player's characteristics have been recorded. Now we have to choose clothes. For example, the bathing suit of Japanese schoolgirls or the current version. But you could have chosen not to wear any clothes at all. Character creation was complete. The game had begun. Now we had to learn the rules of the game. Matthew Gu realized that at the very beginning of the game, everyone gets a ticket. And this ticket must be used immediately. The guy jumped into the game. He didn't even know what the game was. He who doesn't take risks doesn't win. Therefore, we must move forward to taste victory. The boy found himself in a semi-dark, abandoned room. Where to go next? There were no clues. What's the next step? There was no one at the ticket office. Where can I get a ticket? And what is the ticket for? And this must be the portal to the game, not a happy sight. The portal was frightening. Would the whole game be a nightmare too? The frightened boy wondered if he should go any further. The paws of this mystical monster were too scary. A new notice has appeared. Matthew Gu has learned that there are special tickets that do not require a box office to activate. However, such tickets are extremely difficult to obtain. The guy also learned that there are single and group tickets that allow you to get special items for the game. Ticket levels range from 1 to 10 stars. The higher the ticket level, the harder it is to get. There were many question marks in the player's characterization. The player had no tickets, no points, no special items, no physical strength, no intelligence. There was practically nothing. But the player had a strange nickname. God-befuddled star. That's all he could boast about. The player's characterization surprised not only the doctor, someone laughed nearby. Matthew Gu was terrified. He saw a slouching man who was laughing all the time. Who is he? It was a non-player character, a ticket taker. He kept asking for the player to come up and punch him in the face. The ticket taker held out the ticket. He kept laughing and asking to have his face painted. The request was granted. Apparently the ticket taker got what he wanted. Matthew Gu doesn't like to be asked for a long time. He is ready to help a person at any moment. The player finally got a single entry ticket. The level of this ticket was low. The ticket taker clearly took offense to Matthew Gu. He jokingly asked to be punched in the face. But the young doctor didn't seem to get the joke. Matthew Gu politely said goodbye to the offended ticket taker. But the slouching man shouted wildly that he never wanted to see the strange doctor again. The player has received his first ticket, and now he is free to pass through the portal. What secrets lurk behind this sinister portal? How dangerous is this game? Looks like it's going to be a tough road, but we have to keep moving forward. Going through a portal is very unusual. Humans are not birds and cannot fly. Apparently the creators of the game did not take this into account. Our main character flew as fast as an eagle, but landed like a frog. 6 players find themselves in a college of evil spirits. In this college, 29 students were killed in a fire and turned into evil spirits, whose eerie screams are still heard in the school building. Matthew Gu and other players must pretend to be the teachers of these students and find out the whole truth about the terrible incident of a year ago. Students shouldn't know that players are living people. That's the kind of friendly reminder Matthew Gu saw in yet another notice. The schoolyard was deserted. There was disorder everywhere and a frightening silence. Apparently living people didn't dare enter the schoolyard, because here you can hear the soul-crushing screams of evil spirits. You can even see the spirits. After a painful landing, Matthew Gu met his familiar plumber. There were other players in the school hallway. The plumber driver's name was Van. He was too scared when he found out that he would have to play the role of a teacher of ghost children. An urgent pedagogical meeting began in the corridor. Everyone was serious. Only Fatty Wang was crying and wanted to go home. This intelligent guy's name is Chu Chang-hee. He's also a gambler and is supposed to be a teacher of evil spirits. That's how Chu Chang-hee and Matthew Gu were when they were kids. They were thick as thieves. Matthew Gu didn't expect to see his old friend in the gaming world, but God works in mysterious ways. The game is a very unpredictable thing. Chu Chang-hei paid no attention to anyone, including his old friend. Such arrogant ignoring really annoyed Matthew Gu. In the corner, a man with a sturdy build was trembling with fear. His name was Gu Li. He was also afraid of being a teacher of evil spirits. Zhao Hengshui's mother was indignant that the hallway stank. She couldn't breathe properly. The very young Qixin Binglin was paralyzed with fear. She seemed to be afraid to even breathe. She really wanted to leave the scary game. Only Chu Chang-hei alone seemed cold and completely calm. Apparently, he was even interested in a game that would help humans evolve. Fatty Wang suggested that we quickly find a way to successfully complete the mission. After all, then this whole nightmare would disappear. The sensible Chu Chang-hei suggested that the real world is chaos right now. Therefore, they should urgently find all the tickets. This is what will allow them to successfully survive in real time. During a heated teaching meeting, Chu Chang-hei said that all the players needed to play the role of ghosts perfectly. The students should never know that their teachers were living people. Also, Cold Guy noted that if the ghost kids find out the truth about them, the mission won't be a complete failure. The game could probably be continued. After all, the notice was not a menacing warning, but merely a friendly reminder. The teachers didn't even know what subjects they were supposed to teach. So they decided to go to the teacher's lounge. They thought they could find clues there. The doctor never expected to become a teacher sometime in his life. Once again, fate threw him another surprise. Matthew Gu tried to remain calm. I guess he didn't know yet what his plan of action would be. The doctor still couldn't believe that he was completely caught up in the game. Perhaps it was just a play of his imagination. A trivial illusion. The main character opens the door and walks into the teacher's office with the rest of the group. He sees that each of the desks has the teacher's name on it. There is also a textbook of the corresponding lesson. The protagonist picks up a textbook from his desk. His subject turns out to be politics. Chu Chang-hei says he has biology, and the hero asks if they've been slipped the most inappropriate subjects. They ask who got what item, and the others answer what their items are. Chu Chang-hei notices that there is another teacher's desk in the office and walks over to it. It says that the literature teacher is Xiao Bang. Wang notices that there is no member with that name in their group. Chu Chang-hei says that there are only 6 people in their group, and that maybe she's the real teacher here. They decide to look at the class schedule. The hero reads that today's lesson is physical education, which will last 45 minutes. Wang asks if it is okay not to go to class since he's a gym teacher. He replies that if he does, he will die immediately. Wang gets scared. Chu Chang-hei reads that today will be PE, then politics and history. After that, there will be no classes. Suddenly, the door opens and someone enters the room. The group members look fearfully at the door. There turns out to be a ghost child who reaches out to the teacher. For a moment, the hero stares at him, answering nothing. He then takes a chair and sits on it, and invites the student to come in. He says that he is the 2nd grade head boy, and that he has come to remind the gym teacher that his class is about to start. The boy says that Matthew Gu is sitting in the wrong seat, and that it's teacher Xiao Bang's seat. The hero replies that he knows that. The boy asks who will be their gym teacher. Van nervously says that it will be him. The boy puts notebooks on the table and says they are workbooks for the lesson. He tells the teacher not to be late. The boy turns around and starts to walk away from the teacher's office. Before exiting, he turns around and stares creepily at a section of the group. The protagonist notices that the boy is worried about Xiao Bang. Chu Chang-hei suggests that perhaps she is related to the accident that caused the children's deaths. Wang asks Matthew Gu where the 2nd grade classroom is. The latter assumes that if the 1st grade students study on the 1st floor, the 2nd grade students must be studying on the 2nd or 3rd floor. Matthew Gu says that the next class is his, so he'll find Wang after PE. Chu Chang-hei wonders if anything unforeseen will happen during class. The character notices a book lying nearby and a note underneath it that says love is the best form of education. Chu Chang-hei says that in order to leave this place, they need to complete a mission or die. The hero thinks about the fact that he's the only one with a feature that doesn't work, which makes death in the game not real. Van walks down the hallway and suddenly steps on something soft. He gets scared and asks what it is. Van looks down and sees that it is the lifeless body of a rabbit. He doesn't understand where it came from. He hears the assemblage from himself, the voice of a student addressing him. He shakes with fear. A student with a creepy look shows him where to go. Van looks at the ghostly child, from whom a purple glow emanates. Van opens the door to their classroom. There he sees a whole class of ghost children staring at him intently. He's thinking about this whole thing ending soon. He begins reading from the textbook that physical education class promotes students' physical development and improves their teamwork skills. One of the students calls out to him, but Wang doesn't immediately respond. When Wang asks what's wrong, the textbook suggests playing a game because his lesson is too boring. Van fearfully asks what game they want to play, and the child replies that they want to tell stories. He explains that you need to have each participant tell their creepiest memory. Van thinks about his creepiest memory happening right now, in this classroom. The kid says they will start with the last student on the last desk. Wang suggests having a lesson first, and then already telling stories in after-school time. The student says to let the last student begin their creepy story. He says he and his buddies once stole 5 yuan to buy a sweet soda from the store. Van says that stealing is wrong, and once again suggests that we go back to the lesson. The next student tells his story about how he didn't like his newborn brother, and drew on his face with a marker. The student goes on to say that he told his parents that his brother did it on his own. The next student says she didn't like her aunt's dog, so she fed her a chicken bone. The students continue to tell creepy stories. One tells how he stole his neighbor's rabbit. Wang is even more horrified as he hears more and more horrifying stories from the disciples. He can't stand it and starts screaming loudly. He begins to move away from the children in fear. Van thinks about them being monsters since they did so many horrible things at such a young age. One of the children asks if the teacher is okay. Wang shakes with fear and says nothing. After that, they continue with the game and their stories. The students continue their stories, each with a gruesome ending. One of the students threw a girl from a window. Another in his story killed his little sister. They keep talking about the murders. Another student killed his grandfather. Van is horrified and tells them to stop telling it. Suddenly everything goes quiet, and the students don't say anything else. Wang wonders if they have finished their terrible game. The students tell him that now it's his turn to tell his creepy story. The student says that if he has nothing to say, it will mean that he is different from them. Van stutters, trying to say something. He doesn't know what to do. The children push him up and tell him to provide his story quickly. Van cries out in despair that he has nothing to tell. Suddenly, the door of the room opens. Matthew Gu is standing there, asking why everyone is standing. Van is relieved to run to him, and happy that he has finally arrived. Chu Changhe, who came along with the protagonist, asks what's going on here. Van shakes with fear and tries to explain what the kids were doing. The child says they were playing a game and asks what Matthew Gu is doing here. He replies that the lesson is over and that he came to visit them. The kid says they're not done playing yet and that they need Teacher Wang to tell his story. Matthew Gu says that the teacher needs to rest since the lesson is over and that the game can be continued later. Chu Changhe leads Wang away, who asks worriedly about Matthew Gu. Chu Changhe says he's in the middle of a lesson. Wang is worried about the kids, but Chu Changhe is confident that Matthew Gu can handle it since he's seen a lot of life. Matthew Gu is left alone in the office with the children. Their head teacher asks if he's their new politics teacher. The protagonist introduces himself, and the student asks if he can ask him one question. He asks what Matthew Gu fears more than anything else in the world. A student asks what Teacher Gu fears most in the world. Matthew Gu leans over and tells the student in his ear to call him Mr. Gu, or he will wring his neck. The hero walks over to the teacher's desk. He announces for the students to take their seats. He starts the lesson. He is completely unperturbed and not afraid of the children. After a while, the door to the room opens. Matthew Gu walks out of the classroom. Wang notes that there are still 10 minutes left in the lesson and asks why he went out so early. The hero replies that he got bored reading the textbook. The hero comes to the teacher's office and says that he learned something interesting. Chu Changhe wonders what he learned. The hero comes to the table and says that the terms of the game specified 29 students, but he only counted 28. The hero says that he asked around and found out that the missing student's name is Li Xuan Mei, and that no one in the class likes her. Wang says the children are very scary and told bloodthirsty stories in his class. Another participant says he wouldn't have been scared of the kids, and Wang says he just didn't see them. The character asks if the children have mentioned the missing teacher in their stories. Wang replies that they didn't mention the teacher. Then he abruptly remembers something. He says the children's stories included a girl they were all bullying. The hero asks if they were all talking about the same student. Van says he doesn't know, but the kids mentioned that they stole her rabbit and threw the blame on her for stealing the money. Participants are horrified at how children could do such terrible things. The hero says that if these stories are true, the clue is very simple. After her death, the girl became a vengeful ghost and cursed the rest of the class. Chu Changhe says that in that case, they need to find out who the girl is and find out Teacher Xiaobang's role in the story. The main character says that while they have time, they need to scout the school for some clues. Several female participants refuse to walk around the school and decide to stay here. Van decides to go. Chu Changhe says that he and Wang will search the main building and asks where Matthew Gu will go. He replies that he'll just look around. The protagonist walks outside and heads towards the closed gates of the school. As he approaches the gate, he sees that there are strips of paper taped to it. He takes one of them. He sees an inscription on the sheet that says notification to the wrong city police. The hero looks at the bulletin board outside the gate. He notices that it says something about a fire, but he can't see very well at this distance. From his hand grasping the bars, one of the rods immediately fell off. The hero looks at the splinter in his hand and marvels at how easily it broke. Matthew Gu goes back to the group and asks if they found anything. Chu Chang-hye says they found a warehouse with a locked door that had recently been replaced. They also found evidence of a fire. The hero says it's an amazing coincidence. Chu Chang-hye asks what's the matter. The hero places a piece of paper on the table and shows its contents. Van reads what it says about the 6th grade fire. The hero says he ripped it off the bulletin board. Chu Chang-hye reads that the fire occurred on November 26th, 2008 year. The fire was planned, and evidence was found indicating deliberate arson. Wang reads that there were a total of 29 victims, 28 students and of the teacher, Xiao Bang. Chu Chang-hye reflects on what happened. He assumes there was another student besides the 28. He finds a mention in a picture of Li Xuanmei. The newspaper says she disappeared that night. Wang notes that there must have been 29 fire deaths then. Chu Chang-hye suggests that Li Xuanmei also died that day, but her body has not been found. He says there are 2 possibilities. The first is that she was killed and cursed the other disciples, turning into a vengeful ghost. The second option is that she caused the fire, after which all the dead people cursed her. Chu Chang-hye says he has 2 theories. Either she was killed and her spirit killed everyone with a fire, or she set the building on fire and everyone killed came back for revenge. Matthew Gu says that evil spirits can kill people much more easily, and they don't need to gather everyone in one place and start a fire. He decides that the second option is more plausible. Wang thinks about what then is the reason for Xiaobang's existence. He says it's too complicated a task. Matthew Gu says they can find a student and beat the information out of them. Wang asks in surprise if he's serious, and Matthew Gu replies in the affirmative. The hero asks the others if they want him to get the information. Chu Chang-hye says that the door was closed, and that the dormitory will open at 4 o'clock. Wang says that the previous teacher hasn't returned yet. Suddenly, Chu Chang-hye turns to teacher Xiaobang. Someone's silhouette appears at the teacher's room door, and the door begins to creak open. Someone appears in the passage. Van is startled by it. It turns out to be one of the band members. He asks what is happening to them. Van complains that he was scared and that he almost lost his mind. He says that he was initially wary of the children, but then realized that they were only bullying the weak, and that there was no disruption in his class. Matthew Gu says that since he's back, they should go to the dormitory. After a while, it is late evening outside. The whole group goes outside. The girls walk together and shake with fear. Van says the closer they get, the scarier it gets. A participant tells him not to bring up Arnica over nonsense. They go inside and the guy says that he and Matthew Gu happen to be roommates. Wang says that he and Chu Chang-hye are close by, so they can call them if necessary. Chu Chang-hye goes to the door and says that this is Xiaobang's room, but it's locked. Matthew Gu says they can still look there later anyway. Matthew Gu goes to his room. It is clean, neat, and looks untouched. His roommate says he feels tired even though he's in the game. He asks if the protagonist was scared during the lesson. Matthew Gu walks to the window and looks out there. His neighbor asks what he is looking at. Suddenly, a creepy face appears in the window. The boy starts screaming in terror. Van runs into the room and asks what happened here, and why the guy who was acting like a hero in the morning is screaming. The hero points to the window and says they just saw a face. He turns around to look there, but there's nothing there anymore. Matthew Gu explains to Wang and Chu Chang-hye that they need to be careful in this place. He says they are all over the place. A face becomes visible in the doorway. Matthew Gu once again recommends being prepared for anything. The main character says that they will wait until midnight, then they will spring into action. Chu Chang-hye tells him to take care of himself. The protagonist's neighbor asks for someone to check under his bed, as he thinks someone is there. The hero looks down and says there's nothing there and that he shouldn't worry. He says he doesn't need to worry and that it's empty under the bed. The hero starts to leave the room, and his startled neighbor asks if he's leaving already. He gets scared and says it's dangerous outside and that he should stay here, safe. The hero answers nothing, leaves the room and closes the door behind him. The neighbor asks if the hero will go out, and he says yes. The neighbor says that it is not worth it and it is better to stay safe. The hero refuses and says they need to exercise their nerves. The neighbor tells the hero to remember to lock the door, and he leaves. The hero knocks on the door of the room and asks if anyone is here. He gets no response and decides to open the door to the inside. The hero goes inside and sees that no one is there. He thinks this is very strange. The hero looks at his phone and thinks about the fact that communication doesn't work here, so it will be very difficult to find buddies. The hero thinks that getting everyone here together will be useless, so you might as well not try. He wonders if Wang and Chu Chang-hye have encountered something unforeseen, but decides that the most important thing right now is to find Teacher Kosaku. He walks to the door to Teacher Kosaku's room. He ponders whether he is not inside now. He touches the door and it opens. The hero is surprised that it was unlocked. He flicks the switch a few times, but to no avail. The room remains dark. The hero picks up his phone and uses it as a flashlight. He looks around the room. The hero thinks about the fact that the lock appears to have been picked. He notices a book lying on the bed. The hero comes closer and sees that it's not a book, but someone's diary. The hero sits down on the bed and decides to see if there are any clues in the journal. He sees a page that says the ghost cultivates a soul curse. The page describes a curse to be placed on a ghost who has returned from death for revenge. The page says what needs to be done 10 years after the death of the person who turned into a spirit. But the page is cut off next. Matthew Gu decides to look through the remaining pages of the diary. The hero reads the spell that is written in the book. He marvels at the fact that Kosaka has records of such important spells. He reads that to use the spell, you need a person's body or their ashes after cremation. He suggests that it's possible that the dead Kosaku cast a spell on Li Xuanmei, and she burned herself in retaliation. The hero decides to get distracted and explore some other place in search of clues. Matthew Gu notices something under the bed and shines his phone there. He is not happy and swears, from where the head of a creepy ghost comes out that has its teeth on the protagonist. The hero nonchalantly pushes the head away with his foot, commenting on the creature's ugliness. He leaves Kosaku's room and heads forward down the hallway. He thinks about the fact that probably no one has come back yet. The hero ponders the possibility of finding clues to the case on the 4th floor. Suddenly, the hero notices someone's fleeing shadow, which hides from him in the hallway. He wonders if it's Kosaku and decides to follow the shadow. He runs in the shadow's footsteps and thinks about it leading him to the 2nd floor. He runs into the hallway, but there is no one there. He looks into the darkness of the corridor. The protagonist's neighbor is thinking about the fact that he has to leave since everyone has already left. Then he thinks that there is no need to leave since it is safe here. He is shaking with fear. He hears a creak from the side of the door. He wonders why Matthew Gu came so early. The sound stops and he walks to the door, unsure if he heard it. The guy looks at the door, trying to see what's on the other side. He peers through the peephole of the door. There's no one there, but you can still hear the creaking outside. The dark, dingy hallway continues to bifurcate with creaks. The protagonist's neighbor gets even more frightened. He hides under the covers and tries to convince himself that he didn't hear anything. He wonders if it's possible that this sound is made by Matthew Gu. He looks nervously and fearfully at the doorknob. He looks out, thinking that Matthew Gu has already arrived. Suddenly, he sees something in front of him and starts screaming furiously. Matthew Gu is walking down the hall. He reflects on the fact that history is always strikingly similar. He picks up a small piece of bling from the floor that looks like a skull. He notices a girl and assumes she is also a player looking for clues and hints for a mission. He notices her enter the room and wonders what she's doing inside. He runs inside after her, into the room to see what she's doing. The other participant sits and thinks in despair that Aunt Zhao is dead. A few minutes ago, she and Zhao had been discussing whether the ghosts would recognize that they were living people. They hear a knock on the door and a voice that says it's Chu Chang-hei and tells them to open the door. Zhao opens the door and looks around. She doesn't see anyone and asks where Chu Chang-hei is. Suddenly, a ghost appears from the ceiling right next to her. Zhao starts screaming at the top of his voice in fear. At the same moment, the ghost kills her by blowing her head off her shoulders. Her neighbor watches in horror as her lifeless body falls to the ground. The girl tries not to scream and covers her mouth with her hands so as not to give away her fear. She sees a ghost in the process of the door who giggles loudly. She cries with fear and thinks that she can't stay in this room any longer and that she has to run away because the ghost might come back. She covers her head with her hands and thinks about the fact that she has checked all the rooms and it must be safe here. Suddenly, she hears a knock on her door. She is startled and gets to her feet. The girl thinks it's another ghost coming and props the door open so no one can get in. The knocking doesn't stop, and she starts yelling for people to stay away from her and go away. The girl sees the silhouette of a creepy head in the passageway. She looks at the silhouette with horror. The girl shakes with fear as the creature walks past her room. She thinks about the fact that he is in the next room now, and could come in at any moment. She decides she has to run. She opens the door to the hallway abruptly and decisively. Right in front of her, she can see a creepy humanoid creature staring at her. The creature starts growling when it sees the girl. The girl screams in fear and starts running away from the ghost. She runs out of the hallway and doesn't know where to go now. She finds the first door she can find and runs inside. The girl runs into the room, running away from the ghosts. She quickly locks the door behind her. The girl decides to look through the peephole, and she hears Van's voice from the next room saying it's chilly. She relaxes when she realizes there are other people here. Looking around the room, she notices a piece of paper. She asks what it is. The girl approaches and sees that it is a note. She nervously picks it up from the floor. The note is written on behalf of a man who is convinced that they want to lock him in a box and torture him. The note says they're right behind. That's where it ends. The girl reads the note and turns fearfully to see what is behind her. The creature that was chasing her is there. There is a shrill scream from the girl. Matthew Gu is walking down the hallway and he hears a scream. He stops abruptly. Guy wonders why there are so many people screaming today. Wang and Chu Changhai explore a dark corridor where nothing can be seen. A frightened Wang turns to Chu Changhai. Toth gestures for him to keep his voice down. They both look at the door of the room, the entrance to which is barricaded. They both look at the door of the room where the entrance is barricaded. Suddenly, they see a creepy-looking ghost head in the door. Van gets scared and starts screaming when he sees the creature. The sound of the creature trying to open the door can be heard, but it fails from behind the barricade. Chu Chang-hei says that this is the only room with a lock, and that it won't last long. Wang asks what they should do in that case. Chu Chang-hei takes a sheet and says their only option is to jump off the window. Wang says he's crazy and that they will die. Chu Chang-hei replies that it's all the same whether they crash or get killed by ghosts. At that moment, the glass on the door shatters and the ghost's hand reaches inside the room. A hand reaches for the doorknob. Van yells that he'd rather crash when falling from a height. He tries to open the window, the new one won't open. Van gets scared and says they are trapped. Chu Chang-hei tries to open it as well. Wang asks in desperation what they should do. Suddenly the monster's head hits something and blood spurts out. Wang looks on in surprise at what is happening. Chu Chang-hei has a smug expression as if he expected this. Matthew Gu becomes visible in the passage. Wang rejoices at his arrival. The protagonist enters with a stool in his hands, which he used as an improvised weapon. Van is overjoyed and jumps towards the doctor, but misses and flies to the floor. Chu Chang-hei asks if he killed the ghost. Matthew Gu replies that he saw it standing with the back of its head toward him, so he killed it. Wang is surprised that ghosts are susceptible to material attacks. Chu Chang-hei suggests that it's only because of Matthew Gu's power. Wang asks if the protagonist has killed ghosts before. He replies that he started doing so after he got here. The hero asks Chu Chang-hei why he didn't wait for him before investigating. He replies that they are in a complicated situation, and that he will explain later. He asks the hero to look at the evidence. He gives him a small book and tells him that they were attacked by a ghost as soon as they found it. Chu Chang-hei says he'll explain everything to the hero later. He gives him the book and tells him that they found it, and they were immediately attacked by a ghost. It turns out to be the journal of the Red Leader, Kosaki. The hero reads an entry there saying that the supervisor found out that the students were bullying Lee and that Kosaka wanted to talk to the class about it. A system notification appears, which tells you that the hero has a secondary mission. He needs to live in the dungeon for another 5 hours. An additional reward is given for it. The hero is angry because he can't get out until he finishes this mission. The hero says that the truth will be revealed soon, and says that the game doesn't want him to miss this mission and made him spend another 5 hours here. Wang assumes it's because he beat up a non-player character. Matthew Gu asks why they shouldn't do the same. Now Wang is too afraid. The hero continues reading the magazine. It says that the class promised to be friends with the girl, and she asked for everyone to gather in one place. The teacher thinks it's to apologize. The hero finishes the contents of the page and flips to the next page. It says all over the place that the author was wrong. When the hero finishes reading the diary, Van asks if that's all there is to it. The hero replies that it's enough to find out the truth. He says the girl was bullied by other students and died after she burned the others. Chu Chang-hei asks if that means she made the others show up at the warehouse, after which she started a fire. The hero adds that they came back to get revenge on her, and stuck spell paper on her body to torment her, even after she died. Wang says that it's no wonder then that they didn't stay the night at the school. That means they went to the student's house. He says that this means their mission is over, and they will be able to leave the dungeon. Wang and Chu Chang-hei gradually disappear in a stream of blue light. Matthew Gu advises them to be careful. The hero remains alone in the hallway as the others disappear. He reads the entry in the newspaper, and sees that 10 years after the incident is today's day. He realizes that the dungeon is why he was forced to stay here. The spirits have awakened and become stronger, and will now try to kill the protagonist. He is surprised to notice a man approaching him. The hero asks if it's Kosaka. A young-looking girl reluctantly replies that yes, she is. The hero says that he initially thought she was involved in the case, but she was actually innocent. Kosaka replies that she was guilty too. She cries and says that if she had been able to spot the odd behavior of the students earlier, she could have prevented it. She says she tries to go into the classroom every night because she hears screams from there, but she can't go inside. She says she can only hear the screams of the girl who relied on her. The hero says that for her own sake and that of a student, she must go with him to the training building. Kosaka replies that she can't get in. The hero tells her to just go, and they head out of the dormitory and into the academic building together. The door is locked with a lock that has a chain tied around the door handle. The hero picks up a boulder to break the lock, but Kosaka says it won't work. The hero nonetheless strikes a rock and punches through the entrance to the door. Matthew Gu says that he succeeded in breaking the school gate, so he thought he could break this door too. Kosaka is surprised. Suddenly a loud scream is heard from the building. Kosaka starts running to find the student. The hero runs into the building but rarely stops. He doesn't know where Kosaka is and tries to find her in the pitch darkness. The hero reads a note stating that the author will be placed in a dark box and locked away forever. Next, he finds the dead body of a rabbit in the hallway. He starts to climb the stairs, and he hears voices at the other end of the hallway. Matthew Gu recalls that Wang mentioned the rabbit after the children's stories. He rereads the note that says they will hide it in a box by the mouse hole. The hero begins to run toward the 4th grade. There are loud noises coming from the training building. Matthew Gu is running down the hallway. The laughter of the ghost students can be heard everywhere. He runs into the office and opens the door with a sharp movement. He stands alone in his office, quiet and no one else around. He walks to the center of the office and kicks back the desk. Mice start scattering from everywhere as he pushed the furniture away. The hero finds a long old table and leans over it. He looks down under the table. There turns out to be a shrunken body with a piece of paper glued to it, scrawled with spells. The hero looks at the body and realizes that it is Lee, the dead student. He hides the spell paper from the forehead of the body. He recalls that the spell restrains the spirit, but if it is removed, the vengeful spirit will return with increased power. Suddenly he hears laughter coming from everywhere. The hero looks at the corpse of the student. Suddenly a spirit awakens and begins to take revenge on its abusers. The hero wondered if Lee's spirit had begun to immediately take revenge on the disciples. The hero decides that he needs to find her spirit. After a short time he comes to the 6th floor. He starts to run when he sees smoke coming from the hallway. Suddenly he sees the ghosts being overwhelmed by flames. They scream in the middle of the fire. The hero tries to get closer but is stopped by a wave of heat from the fire. Kosaka comes to see Lee's spirit. She apologizes for being late. Lee asks if Kosaka said Lee should die. Kosaka takes the girl's head in her hands and says that it's a lie and that she shouldn't have believed it. Kosaka says she didn't say any of that and stayed here as she wanted to take her with her. Lee looks at Kosaka, tears pouring from her eyes. The fire continues to spread through the school grounds. The hero notices that the fire isn't moving towards him and thinks that Lee probably knows that he's the one who broke the spell. The hero decides that the most important thing now is to find a way to escape from here. An emergency message appears in the air that the location is under serious attack and is being destroyed. The system says that all players will be teleported in 10 seconds. A boulder begins to fall on the hero. He curses and closes in before hitting it with a rock. But the countdown ends at just the right moment and the hero is teleported before colliding with the stone. He cautiously opens his eyes. It's daytime all around. From a metal door nearby comes a voice that says he's finally back. The hero says he has been gone for 10 hours and asks why the cashier is 10 years older. She gets angry and resents this insult. She yells that the dungeon was blown up. The hero says he didn't do anything. She yells for him to remember what the mission at school was. He says the mission was to become a teacher and find out the mystery of the classroom. The cashier asks what he was doing there then. The hero says that he learned the secret of the school and also freed its spirit and accidentally blew up the school. The cashier screams that he was only supposed to find out the truth, not destroy the school. She says that the dungeon can't exist now. The hero asks if they can't just return the data. The cashier asks what makes him think it's data, and the hero asks if she's implying that it's not data. The cashier tells the hero to leave and not come back here again, as every cashier has efficiency stats, and that he is lowering her stats. The protagonist exits the booth, and the cashier lastly asks him what his name is. He replies. She says she understands and shoves him out, telling him to leave. A door slams behind the hero. He thinks about what's wrong with this cashier and sees her pinning a sign to the door. It says that Matthew Gu and dogs are not allowed in. The hero resents it. He then turns his attention to the people on the streets of the city. Several of the cars are smashed. The hero decided that they had been dragged into the dungeons without consent. Then he hears a beeping sound from the system interface and asks what it is. The protagonist sees a system notification that says his account data is being downloaded. Once the download is complete, he sees his performance screen, where he still can't see the stats. He notices that he has feature points and asks what they are for. He clicks on the points to increase his strength score, but sees a message that he is incompatible with this feature. Then he does the same thing with the speed indicator, but it doesn't work here either. The third time he tries to increase the physical strength characteristic, but the notification again writes that this option is not available to him. The hero is angry that he can't add points to increase characteristics. He decides to look at the lucky draw feature. He triggers a prank and receives an item as a gift, toilet paper. The hero looks disappointedly at the roll in his hand. He is dissatisfied with the prize he has received. He tosses his prize in the trash can and says this game is unconventional. He looks at the chaos that has reigned since the game started. There are wrecked cars everywhere that have been involved in accidents after their driver was transported into the game. The hero thinks about the fact that there will be major changes in the world now that the entire population has gotten into the game. Matthew Gu thinks about how his life is going to be more complicated now. He sees a notification that a certain George Chu has sent a request to be added as a friend. The hero agrees and adds him as a friend with the click of a button. He receives a message from Chu saying that he is near the ticket booth. The protagonist approaches the cash register, where he is not allowed to enter. He looks around for someone he knows. The hero notices Chu Chang-hee in the crowd. Chu asks how they are going to deal with the kind of chaos that resulted from the start of the game. Chu Chang-hee asks what makes the protagonist different from the other players. The latter replies that he needs to be careful because after dying in the game, he will die in the real world. Chu Chang-hye suggests that they retreat to a quieter place to continue discussing their plans. The hero agrees and says that not far away is his apartment where you can talk quietly. On the way, the hero hears someone calling him by his last name. He looks around and sees it's Van waving at him. He says it's good that he was able to find him and asks if he can go with him. Matthew Gu agrees. The three of them arrive at a large brick building. Chu Chang-hye reads an inscription that says this is the entrance to the tunnel that leads to the Renaissance Hotel. The hero says that few people would choose this place, and that it is quiet and pleasant. They arrive at the entrance of the protagonist's apartment. Wang notices that Matthew Gu's door is different from the others. It is a thick, metal door. The hero replies that he has a great landlord who is afraid to die. The three boys walk into a neat, cleaned room. The TV on the wall shows only white noise. The hero notes that the cable is gone. Chu Chang-hye says that the internet and other communications are gone, so they can't check news from around the world. The hero remembers that somewhere he has a radio, a gift from the president of the orphanage. He decides to see if it will work. The hero starts looking for the radio in the boxes. After a while, he pulls a radio out of a drawer. The hero sets it up, trying to tune it to the right frequency. The radio hisses and intermittently transmits messages to the military. Then the message is interrupted and the radio only hisses. Van asks what it means. Chu Chang-hye pondered for a moment but didn't answer anything. The protagonist says that you can hit the radio to make it work. Wang decides to cook some food as he's very hungry. Some time passes in the protagonist's apartment. Chu Chang-hye says that they know a little bit of information, specifically that everyone in the land has now become part of the game. As they go through the dungeons, they receive a variety of rewards. He says that this information is not enough and asks if the hero has any plans. The hero suggests going to the dungeons more often, as he is not safe in the normal world either. He believes that their lives will not be able to return to normal for a while yet. Wang offers to eat, but there is not much food in Matthew Gu's refrigerator. Wang interrupts his sentence due to the system interface window suddenly appearing. Chu Chang-hye also sees the message in his interface. The protagonist also receives the same message. He is surprised to read it. The system notification states that the cursed high school location quest is no longer available due to the destruction of the location and that players will be compensated. Chu Chang-hye says Matthew Gu is the only one affected by the location permit. The hero reads that the notice writes to refrain from such behavior in the future. The protagonist gets angry and is told that this message is a threat. Chu Chang-hye says the system has offered compensation, so it can't be a threat. The character receives a one-time voucher as compensation, which allows them to enter any dungeon as a group. He takes the voucher and says the system is quite generous, and that it's a useful thing for him. Then after a while, all three of them go out into the city. They're looking around the stores. All the stores they find are closed, no one is working. Matthew Gu decides to look for something on the street. He thinks that maybe they can find something useful. While searching for useful items, they stumble upon an unlocked car with cargo. Matthew Gu climbs inside looking for the items and asks if it's immoral. Chu Chang-hye replies that at any rate these items will not travel to their recipients. The main character tells the others to help him get the boxes. Chu Chang-hye says he would like to remain an honest man. Van reads the shipping address on the box and is horrified to see that it's a package for a corpse refrigerator. Matthew Gu sneaks up to him and tells him that this is his address. Wang is startled and shrieks. After a while, they packed up the truck. Chu Chang-hye says it's time for them to go back. They packed everything into huge bags. Suddenly, the protagonist hears the sound of the system's interface. A window appears that says they have activated a special dungeon called the Hearse Driver Test Center. The system writes that more players are needed, so additional random players will be added here. The hero reads the mission objective. Get a hearse driver's license. The difficulty is marked with a score of 6 stars. Wang resents that this task is much more difficult than the previous one. They hear someone nearby call Cheryl Xiao's name and turn around to look. A player with the nickname Cold Fireworks is thrilled to have met Cheryl. The protagonist remembers that Cheryl is an actress and thinks about how it's easy to meet a celebrity in the game. The actress herself stands sullenly and says nothing back to the guy. Another girl complains that the dungeon activated and she was dragged here. All of the participants hear an unfamiliar voice behind them. Which of all people greets them? They turn around. It's a non-player character named Teacher Che. He says he won't teach them anything, just how to count points. He explains the rules. The assignment consists of a written test and a practical assignment. You have to get 80 points in the practical test. He goes on to explain that in order to pass the practical task, he will need to drive the cars behind him. The first car is a ritual services car. The second car is an ambulance covered in blood. The third car is a blood-covered autocar that is externally damaged. Mentor says players rarely encounter this dungeon. He says that a license to drive a hearse is not a useless thing at all, and that they will want it while taking the test. Mentor says he advises not to fail tests and not to be lazy. The teacher gives another example with a playing card. Sometimes it may seem useless, but as the game progresses, there will be situations where it will be the best possible card in the game. He suggests that players go inside and start looking for answers to solve the written test inside. He adds one last detail. There are evil spirits in the building that will interfere and threaten the lives of the challenge participants. He laughs wickedly and tells them to drive carefully. The teacher says that the test quiz is about to begin and tells the participants to go inside the building. He then adds that they may encounter demonic spirits that may interfere with them and threaten their lives. He smiles wickedly, wishes them luck, and tells them to get started. The heroes come inside and find themselves in front of a long table. A teacher is standing there. Wang notes that it's a creepy place. The tutor tells participants not to cheat, as everyone will have different test items. He says participants can communicate with each other while completing tasks. The teacher comes out and wishes them not to die during the tasks. The teacher smiles and walks out the door of the room. He closes the door behind him with a loud bang. Wang is horrified that players can die during a writing assignment. Matthew Gu and Chu Changhe approach the table with the assignments. The protagonist notes that both parts of completing the assignment are very strange. He picks up the assignment sheet and reads how the point allocation is arranged. Chu Changhe is reading his test. It describes a situation. There are 3 ghosts in a 3-story building, 1 for each floor. Rear asks to describe the death of each of them. Matthew Gu reads his test where you have to find out the gender of a ghost with the last name Ma. They keep reading ridiculous, incomprehensible tests. The heroes keep reading tests. One of them asks how the ghost of a pregnant woman will behave if a song about maternal love is sung to her. Wang says he's sure the wrong answer is to dance under the moon. Matthew Gu sullenly says that anything is possible, and this option could be the right one. Wang asks that Matthew Gu doesn't scare him. The hero smirks. The next questions are not test questions. You have to insert the correct word. Matthew Gu says it looks like the system has created some random questions. Van worriedly asks what they should do in such a case. The hero says that there are only 3 floors in the building, and that they need to look around. He suggests they start on the 1st floor. He turns and looks around the room. The hero notices a framed photo of a man. He suggests that it might be a photo of the dead. He is approached by the rest of the trial and looks at the picture on the wall. Chu Changhe suggests that they should match the ghosts mentioned in the writing assignments. Wang gets scared and hides behind Chu Changhe's back. The protagonist teases Van and offers to go into the room behind the door to find out what's in there. One of the participants sees the main character's robe and asks if he is a doctor and if he can go with him. The actress is also eager to join them. Chu Changhe looks at the girl carefully, but doesn't say anything. The protagonist allows them to stay with him. He goes to the door with the picture and opens it. The door creaks open. An ominous violet glow can be seen from its crack. The door to the room opens with an unpleasant creak. The characters walk inside and look around the room. There turn out to be flowers on the grave of a man. On the flowers, there is a ribbon with an inscription about the memory of the deceased. Next to the flowers, the heroes see a portrait of a dead middle-aged man. Wang notes that it looks eerie. The main character walks up to the coffin and pushes it aside. Van yells and asks what he's up to. Matthew Gu responds by opening the coffin and telling him to get help. After a while, with a friendly effort, they push back the lid of the coffin. Everyone looks inside the coffin, but Wang closes his eyes. Chu Changhe asks what they could find in there. The coffin is empty. There's no body, no other objects. Matthew Gu says they chnit nothing, while Wang nervously suggests they go off to some other room. Some time passes as the heroes explore the room looking for clues. The characters then return to the main room. They look at doors with pictures of dead people. The actress points to one of the rooms and says that this room is very similar to one of the previous rooms. The protagonist comes closer and examines the portrait of the deceased. Wang asks if Matthew Gu wants to open this coffin as well. He says that in the previous room, the coffin was empty. The protagonist tells them to study the back text carefully. He assumes that they can find some clues in the questions themselves. Chu Changhe reads that the question states that there is one ferocious ghost for each of the 3 floors. 3 of these ghosts have the last names Ma, Yang, and Zhao. The actress notes that the questions also include a pregnant ghost and a chatty ghost. The hero rips the ceremonial ribbon off the memorial. It makes the others uncomfortable. Chu Changhe says they have a time limit, and the 2nd floor houses over 100 funeral parlors. They won't have time if they consider them one at a time. Matthew Gu says to first look for dead people with the right last names on the 1st floor. Chu Changhe replies that he has more clues in his version of the written test. He says that the 3 deceased people knew each other before they died. He asked what vehicles these people corresponded to. Matthew Gu agrees that the 3 ghosts are connected, and thinks they need to solve one of the mysteries to solve the rest and catch one of the ghosts. One of the participants nervously thinks about the main character deciding to catch a ghost. The main character leaves the room and suggests that the others split up and start working. The contestant gets nervous and says that they shouldn't split up because then they might face the ghost alone. The hero smiles ominously and tells them not to worry, as they are sure to meet the ghosts again. As the characters explore the premise, quite a bit of time passes. Togo returns to the central hall to exchange the information gathered. The protagonist says that there are several people for each of the given names, and several funeral parlors at once can relate to the right individuals. Chu Chang-hye says it's very good that they were able to eliminate so many rooms, but they still have a lot of work to do. Van asks if they're going to open 19 coffins. Matthew Gu says it's a physically demanding task, and it can take more than an hour. He says there is no need to open every coffin. The hero says he'll walk. Chu Chang-hye volunteers to go with him, and the two of them arrive at the door. Chu Chang-hye is looking somewhere, and the hero asks what he's watching. Chu Chang-hye points to one of the rooms. The hero looks at it. They go inside. They see a portrait of an elderly woman with a messy hairdo. The hero looks at her face and says she looks like a potato. Chu Chang-hye tells the hero to read the memorial inscription. It says that the honors and glowing memory are addressed to her from the Yuzu City Police Department. Chu Chang-hye says that in other cases the inscriptions are written by relatives and co-workers, but here is a different situation. The hero has a thought. He says she couldn't work for the police because her hair doesn't meet law enforcement standards. Chu Chang-hye assumes that since the city police sent her flowers, there are secrets lurking behind her death. The protagonist agrees and says that one of the vehicles looks like an AutoZone that belongs to the police. The hero builds a theory that the criminal escaped from the car jail, and this woman stopped him. But in doing so, she herself died. The hero says that now they need to find evidence to back up this theory. Van says he's overzealous in his search for ghosts. The hero agrees and says in a satisfied tone that they need to open that coffin. The characters together open the coffin lid with a loud scraping sound. Matthew Gu leans over and lays into the slot of the coffin. Suddenly the surroundings go dark and the participants start to panic and ask what happened. The hero tentatively reaches his hand toward the coffin. He touches some object and doesn't realize it's so soft. Van screams in terror that something has come and is trying to grab him. The other participants also start screaming in fear and scatter. The hero realizes that the soft object turned out to be someone's chubby belly. He leans even closer to the coffin, struggling to see what's in there. Nearby, he hears someone bump and make a thumping sound. An indistinct human figure can be seen behind him. He sees that it turns out to be Cheryl, who has been hit and is now sitting on the ground. The hero asks Cheryl what happened and why she didn't run away. She replies that she saw that Matthew Gu himself stayed and decided to stay here too. Cheryl asks why he didn't run away, and he replies that his legs were numb from fear. Cheryl assures him that she can protect him. The protagonist asks if she has a light source. She says she has a flashlight. Cheryl turns on a flashlight and starts using it to make scary faces. The hero tells her to stop. By the light of a flashlight, the hero notices 2 pieces of paper on the floor. He picks them up and begins to read what it says. It is information about a reward for a criminal. There is information there about a murder in progress. A man was bludgeoned to death and robbed. The crime occurred on September 23, 2003. The investigation uncovered the prime suspect, a man named Gunther Ma. There's a portrait of him in the article. It also says that the reward for information about the criminal is $30,000, and for him even more. The hero learns that this killer has the right last name Ma. He sees the indication of the name on the letter, Shelley Young. The protagonist and Cheryl read the text of the thank you letter they found. This letter is about police thanking Shelley Young for providing correct information about a suspect, but the perpetrator escaped. The hero thinks about the fact that there must be some sort of connection between Shelley Young and Gunther Ma. He suggests that after Gunther Ma committed the murder, he was discovered by Shelley Young and reported it to the police. The letter said that Shelley should beware, as the criminal is still at large. The hero suggests that Gunther managed to kill her after all. The hero says they now have clues for one of the test tasks. It asks in what order each of the ghosts in the building died. He also draws attention to another question. How many people were killed by the only male ghost of the 3? The character says that if this is really about Gunther Ma, he killed at least 2 people. The protagonist says that they still need to find information about the 3rd ghost to fully understand the story. He turns to Cheryl and says they have not a minute to lose and suggests they search the 2nd floor. She agrees. The hero thinks about the fact that the ghost is supposed to be in a coffin, but they only found 2 pieces of paper. He assumes the ghost was chasing someone and left the room with his coffin. Wang says he was frightened. He marvels at the courage of his friends who didn't even cry out. Chu Chang-hye says there's something strange here. Van nervously asks what's wrong. Chu Chang-hye asks if Wang Metyu is holding Gu's hand. He replies that he is. They look at the man Wang is holding, and Wang asks why he is silent. Chu Chang-hye cautions Wang and tells him to be ready. He opens the inventory and pulls out an item. Van asks what he should be prepared for. Chu Chang-hye turns on the flashlight he took from his inventory, aiming the beam of light at the man Wang is holding by the arm. The light reveals that all this time it was not a man, but a monstrous ghost. Van begins to shriek with fear when he sees the creature's face right in front of him. Some time passes, and it is 20 hours and 23 minutes. The time for the written test is approaching. The protagonist and Cheryl walk together through the building. He says this floor is dedicated to the ambulance. He suggests that the first floor is dedicated to the hearse and the third floor is dedicated to the motorcade. The hero suggests looking for the nurse's post, which should be on this floor. Cheryl doesn't answer anything and they continue down the hallway. The protagonist thinks Cheryl is much better than the shy players he's dealt with before. They continue pacing the second floor with measured steps. The hero turns his attention to something and shines his flashlight there. Flashlight light points to broken glass in one of the second floor doors. Cheryl suggests going forward with their backs to see what's going on behind them. The hero refuses and says they need to explore the room soon and waste no time. Cheryl gets behind the hero and doesn't answer anything. The hero thinks about the fact that he can feel someone's gaze behind him again. He thinks about the fact that every time he felt it, something bad happened. He suddenly yells at the girl to be careful and points somewhere. The girl looks at him in confusion but says nothing. The hero screams to warn the girl and pulls her out of danger. On the spot where she was standing, glass falls with a clatter and develops into shards. The girl stands exhaustedly on the ground. The hero looks at the place of the fall. The hero thinks about the fact that it was close, and that the frame fell on something. He tries to lift the girl up and she makes a sound of pain. The hero apologizes and releases her hand from his. He chuckles nervously. Cheryl grudgingly tells him to warn her next time he tries to push her away. The hero agrees. The hero gets suspicious. He looks at the place where the glass fell. The hero examines the frame, underneath which a human-shaped impact mark is visible. The hero suggests that the ghost that haunted them was crushed by the frame and vaporized. The hero takes Cheryl's hand and says they don't have much time. They start to run. After a while, they come to another room. Cheryl and the main character stand and listen to what is happening. Cheryl says that the sounds they heard have already subsided. The hero assumes that the source of the sound was the ghost that was haunting them. The hero finally finds a newspaper mentioning a pregnant woman with the last name, Zhao. The hero says that all three spirits knew each other. Gunther Ma killed Shelly Yang, and Zhao was Gunther's pregnant wife. He thinks about how Zhao, Shelly Yang know each other. He decides to go to room 59. Cheryl asks if he wants to find that ghost. The hero says that he would like to catch the ghost on the second floor. Cheryl is surprised that he wanted to catch it. The hero replies that it's the only way to get all the answers. Cheryl Udley says she doesn't think that's the best option. Next, the action takes place elsewhere in the location. A huge staircase can be seen. Wang runs as fast as he can, trying to escape from the ghost. He finds the first door he can find and runs inside the room. He locks the door behind him with force, making a loud banging sound. Van is terrified. He thinks about how lucky he is that he was able to escape from there. He's sure that the ghost could have killed him. Right in front of Van's face, a ghost with a creepy face suddenly appears. Wang screams at the top of his voice in terror. He is scared to death. Chu Chang'e grabs Wang by the shoulder and pulls him towards him. He yells that they need to run. Wang yells that he misses his mother and runs off with Chu Chang'e. Chu Chang'e says they need to split up and meet on the second floor. Wang sees the ghost run after Chu Chang'e. Van notices this, but continues to run from the ghost. Wang hopes that Chu Chang'e will be fine and not get hurt. Van hides and shakes with fear. He says it's a terrible place and wants someone to help him. He abruptly brings up the buddy summoning system that is present in the system. He opens his friends list, but is surprised to find that Matthew Gu is currently unavailable for a call. He looks out the window and wonders if he would automatically leave the dungeon if he jumped off and died from the fall. Wang thinks about the fact that if he jumps but stays alive, it will be even worse. He thinks in despair that he might just fail the exam to leave this place. Behind him, he notices someone's silhouette at the door. Van turns around to see what's there. He falls to the ground from fear and surprise, and realizes that there is a ghost in front of him. He looks at the creature that took the form of a black shadow. Van doesn't understand why it's getting closer as he crawls backward. He stares at the shadow with fear, unable to do anything out of fear. The shadow makes a hissing sound, making Wang even more frightened. Van realizes that the shade is getting closer because it is the shadow of the ghost behind him. He hears a roar behind him and starts running from the ghost with all his legs. He turns around while running to get a closer look at the ghost. It turns out to be the creepy, huge spirit of a cursed pregnant woman. Van runs as fast as he can away from the ghost. He yells that he needs a place to hide. He thinks he can't let the creature catch him and runs into one of the open rooms. Van hides under the bed and utters a wish that the ghost won't find him. He hides and really wants the ghost to pass on without being detected. He continues to hide under the bed for a while, waiting for the ghost to leave. Van finally exhales and says it was very close. He decides to sit here a little longer and then walk. Suddenly, a ghost hand appears right behind him. The creature places a hand on Wang's shoulder, which startles him. He cautiously tries to look around to see the ghost. There turns out to be the creepy ghost of a dead girl. Van starts screaming. He suddenly sees someone else's hand appear in front of him. The man says he's glad he finally caught him and puts his hand on the ghost's arm. Wang recognizes Matthew Gu, who smiles at him confidently. Chu Chang'e stands on the stairs, watching the movements of the ghosts. He stares intently at the scene in front of him and adjusts his glasses. He turns around and starts walking in the opposite direction. At that moment, someone appears in the corridor behind him. Chu Chang-hae walks up the stairs to the top of the stairs. He reflects on Gunther Ma and his ghost. Chu Chang-hae leans over the papers and says that Gunther Ma is probably connected to the autocall. Chu Chang-hae is sure that Gunther is the violent ghost of the third floor. He decides to look at his room and comes to the right door. He was left to find the right cell among several open prison cells. He notices something and shines his flashlight there, trying to make out the object on the wall. It turns out to be a note with information about the prisoner. It says he was released early after 13 years in prison, but after that he killed another woman, was wanted and almost killed a policeman, and was sentenced to death. Chu Chang-hae decides that his victim was Shelly Yang. He hasn't forgotten that she gave him away and decides to kill her. Chu Chang-hae finds it strange that the police revealed information about the denunciation against him. He wonders how Gunther could have known that she was the one who snitched on him. He continues to study the papers looking for clues, but at that moment someone enters the cell. Chu Chang-hae looks around and sees the eerie silhouette of a man with a knife in his hand. Gunther's ghost pounces on Chu Chang-hae, trying to stab him. Chu Chang-hae precisely moves out of the way of the attack without taking damage. He runs out of the cell and starts running away from the ghost of the killer. He runs up the stairs, climbing upward, seeking shelter from the monster. He runs into the room and locks the metal door behind him. Chu Chang-hae rejoices that the creature didn't catch up with him. He suddenly notices something on a piece of paper and asks himself what it is. Chu Chang-hae examines the paper in front of him for clues to the challenge. He reads an ad that is information about a crime. Helen Zhao and Shelly Yang had an argument, and during the argument, pregnant Zhao fell, causing premature labor and bleeding, resulting in death for her and the baby. Chu Chang-hae looks at the picture where Shelly Yang is crossed out. The picture was taken a month before the crime. He realizes that all three were friends, and Gunther and Zhao were a couple. Chu Chang-hae put all the pieces of the puzzle together. Gunther Ma committed murder, and the police issued an arrest warrant. He told his pregnant wife where he was hiding, after which she accidentally blurted out the information in a conversation with Shelly Yang. Shelly Yang then called the police and pointed out the location where Gunther was. Zhao found out who called the police and went to deal with Shelly Yang. During the argument, there was an accident in which Zhao died. Gunther was in prison at the time, where he learned how his wife and unborn child died. He hated Shelly Yang. A short time later, he got out of prison, killed Shelly Yang, and then accepted the death penalty. Chu Chang-hae walks out of the room onto the hallway and looks around. He's sure he's learned the truth, but given the complexity of the assignment, it's probably not that easy. He wonders what will happen on the driving test. Chu Chang-hae thinks about the fact that maybe Shelly Yang's photo will help him in some way. Nearby, he notices Cheryl and Van walking together. Chu Chang-hae calls out to them, and they turn around. Wang has a worried expression on his face. Chu Chang-hae asks where Matthew Gu is, and says that he should tell him about his findings. Van says he doesn't have to tell him anything. Chu Chang-hae asks what happened, and Wang replies that Matthew Gu caught a ghost on the second floor. Wang tells how Matthew Gu pulled the ghost out from under the bed, beat it up, and found out the truth. Wang recalls the fight scene with fear. Van says he's on the third floor now and says the ghost left after the torture. The three of them look down the stairs. A ghost's head appears there. It cautiously peeks out from around the corner. Van gets scared as he saws the ghost. The others keep their composure and remain silent. Matthew Gu suddenly appears from behind and asks what happened. Wang shouts, fuming at the sudden appearance of Matthew Gu behind his back. He hugs the protagonist's leg and says there is a ghost there. The hero asks where he is. Van points down the stairs where they had seen a ghost earlier, but no one is there now. The main character says he's not here, so he must have gotten scared and ran away. Chu Chang-hae says that he put all the pieces of the mosaic together and wanted to tell Matthew Gu about them, but now he sees that it's unnecessary. The hero gives Van some kind of metal-heavy object. It turns out to be an axe splattered with blood, and Van is momentarily startled and asks what it is. Chu Chang-hae asks where the hero found the axe. He replies that he took it from the third-floor ghost who tried to kill him with it. He suggests that he might still need it during the driving test. The hero says that it's been a while, and that they now have a written test to fill out. He opens the door to the hall where their teacher is standing. The teacher says he can't believe his eyes. The characters are standing in front of the teacher. Behind him are 3 cars. He looks at the protagonist and his companions in surprise. The characters look back at him contentedly. The teacher talks about the fact that 4 participants were able to survive the first stage of the challenge. The hero says it was hard for them. He remembers what happened to the others. When they entered the hall, the hero noticed someone lying on the floor. It turns out to be one of the participants who looks injured and scared. His mouth is open. The girl asks if he is dead. Chu Chang-hae replies that he is indeed dead and that he was probably killed by ghosts. Chu Chang-hae says that the others are also most likely dead, but they didn't truly die in the game. Nevertheless, they will be left with lifeless bodies. The teacher says that they all managed to survive. He smiles and says that not everyone will be able to start the next round. He reads the character evaluations and notices with rage that they all passed the test. Meanwhile, it is exactly midnight. The teacher says the written test was too easy for them. Next comes the driving test. Their task in this stage is to do 3 laps in a car. He says he will evaluate performance while sitting in a nearby chair. If the vehicle stops or stalls, the test will fail. The teacher looks cheerfully at the magazine to find who will be the first to take the test. The hero says that he will go first, since he has the number 1. The teacher grudgingly suggests that he choose one of the cars. Chu Chang-hae advised him to take the autocar, as Gunther's ghost could be apprehended with the photo of Shelly Yang he found. The hero says it's not necessary since he has experience with ghosts. He says he'll get even closer with the ghost in the car. Wang asks what if something unforeseen happens. Chu Chang-hae says that something unforeseen is guaranteed to happen. He says if something happens to Matthew Gu, they're all dead. The protagonist and the teacher get behind the wheel of the car and turn on the headlights. The teacher says he can start driving now. The character immediately speeds up, making the teacher surprised. They accelerate to dangerous speeds. The teacher shouts, asking what is wrong with him. The hero replies that it's an easy task. The trainer holds on so he doesn't fall. At high speed, they approach the first lap. Then, after a short time, they complete the second lap. Coach asks if he's out yet. Hero asks if it's about the ghost and says he won't show up. The hero finishes the race and says he's done. The coach is surprised that none of the ghosts showed up. The competitors standing nearby notice that Matthew Gu has gone to lap 4. They decide to move away from the car. The coach nervously asks why the hero didn't stop after completing 3 laps. The hero says the brakes have failed and tolerates the car accelerating on its own. The trainer yells that such a problem has never happened in the dungeon. The protagonist wondered if the teacher knew he was a non-playable character. They continue to pick up speed. The teacher yells for the hero to stop, but he keeps speeding up and says the brakes don't work. He tells the trainer not to be afraid, as the first dungeon the main character was in exploded after going through, but he's fine. The teacher screams when he realizes it's the same person who broke the location of the cursed high school. A teacher yells that it was the protagonist who broke the location of the cursed high school while the hero is making a turn at breakneck speed. The hero says he didn't do anything but tear up a piece of paper with spells scribbled on it. The driver shakes with fear and tells the hero to grip the steering wheel tighter. The teacher says he thought there were a lot of mistakes and system failures in middle school, but it turned out to be the main character, not a system failure. The hero says that for their safety, they must stop this machine by force. The car heads toward the participants who are standing off the road. They begin to scatter in panic when they see the hearse heading in their direction. From a sharp turn, the car's tire flies off and points somewhere. The teacher yells that the hero has ruined their car. The hero replies that he just lost control of the car. He guarantees that they'll make it work. The hearse crashes into the wall of the building at high speed with a deafening rumble. Participants observe a car standing motionless after a collision. The car is smoking. The protagonist opens its door. The hero asks if he passed the test and asks to be issued a driver's license. The teacher can't believe that the vehicles have been destroyed. Now the dungeon is disappearing before its time. He says angrily that they all failed today's test. Hero says that he had 3 laps before the accident. He assures her that everything is fine, as he has a ticket and can come back to retake the exam. The teacher is afraid that the protagonist and his friends won't come back here again, so he announces that they've all passed. They begin to disappear from the dungeon, and the teacher yells at him to never show up in his dungeon again. The 3 of them return to the real world, to the place they disappeared from. In front of them lies a dead body. The hero wonders where it came from. Chu Chang-hae notes that this is a serious incident and that there are now no passengers. Chu Chang-hae suggests going back home to talk it all out. Wang is glad that thanks to Matthew Gu, the ghosts didn't kill him. The main character is looking off into the distance and thinking about something. A huge structure that looks like a multicolored skyscraper is seen there. The heroes note that it was never here before and that it appeared as if from nowhere. Chu Chang-hae read in the interface that the dungeon of the hearse drivers had just been closed. The notice states that it has suspended its operations due to damage. Players are offered compensation in the form of in-game coins. Wang is excited about the new compensation. The hero is unhappy that his name is becoming known. They see another message, that the players have totaled 1 million coins, and now a trading system has been launched that will make it possible to find items for coins in the supermarket. This requires permits, which are given out in a limited way. The hero is pleased that he will be able to buy items with coins. The hero wants to go right now. Wang asks why drive in the middle of the night. The hero replies that they need to get a permit, which are limited in number. The hero comes, and at the checkout there's a girl waiting for him here, who asks him what he needs. He answers that he wants 3 permits to the supermarket. In total, it will cost 150 coins. The cashier asks if they will split the bill or if the hero wants to pay everything himself. The hero replies that he wants to pay for everything from his account. He gets 3 supermarket permits. The cashier lastly advises them to save some coins and wait until the end of the month. She explains why it's worth doing this. She says there will be a huge crowd at the supermarket at the end of the month, and adds that he would have been an easy target there. The hero asks what the girl meant when she called him an easy target. Chu Changhae says that there are thugs and robbers everywhere now. A man walks by him. Wang is frightened of him. He asks the protagonist if the man wants to rob them. They decide to go to the supermarket and head to the right part of town. They come to the big doors that lead into the supermarket. There they are greeted by rows of smiling faces. They greet the heroes kindly in the supermarket. Immediately, the merchants start offering them their wares. A man offers a backpack for 6 coins. A woman offers to buy a blanket for 10 coins. They all smile politely at the characters. The protagonist ignores them and heads towards the department with mechanical tools. The hero examines the merchandise in this compartment. Just then, a male vendor comes running up to him. He asks how he can help. The hero points to one of the products and says that this one will suit him. The man says he will receive a case as a gift when he buys it. He says that in the case the instrument can be disguised as a guitar. The hero looks at the price tag. It says coins. He decides that this is a reasonable price and buys the item. Chu Changhae and Wang meet the protagonist. Wang points out the huge guitar case on the main character's back. He asks in puzzlement if Matthew Gu bought a guitar. The hero replies that it's in case they want to be robbed and says he doesn't want to fight. Chu Changhae watches the store intently. He says the necessities are on the first floor, clothes on the second floor, and food on the third floor. Wang offers to buy meat for cooking. They look at the prices of goods. A half kilogram of cabbage sells for 23 coins. Rice sells for 50 coins for half a kilogram. Pork is more expensive than other goods. 200 coins for half a kilogram. Wang is outraged at such high prices. The vendor says it's not his fault, and that goods are the more expensive the rarer they are, and food has become rarer. The character suggests that this is a way to get the player into the game. He suggests getting other meat. He reveals that the other pork costs half as much. Wang says rice is still cheaper, but it's still a long time away. He's frustrated. Wang decides that today he will grill wings with which. The main character is delighted that Wang is such a skillful cook. Finally, they collected everything they needed. The cashier said that they had to pay 2,050 coins for all the goods. The cashier asks if they have enough. The hero says they have enough. The cashiers talk amongst themselves about how the players have gotten better and have started earning more. Her interlocutor shares a rumor that someone hacked into the hearse dungeon and received 1,000 coins as compensation. They both wonder if the main character was the same guy. A character walks out of the building onto the street after shopping. There is a group of people standing in front of the entrance waiting for them. They're armed criminals. Van is surprised to see them. Their boss asks if their pockets are deep. He declares that they should give all their goods to them or they will die here. Wang is frightened by the threat. The protagonist stares nonchalantly at the bandit boss. He says that he is not an easy man to negotiate with. He asks if the hero knows what happened to the previous daredevil. He insinuates that they killed the previous one who refused to give up their goods. The hero places his case on the ground, much to Van's surprise. The boss tells them to hand over their stuff and then they'll let them go. The hero smirks self-consciously. He takes the handle of his case and yanks with force, pulling out its contents. The hero pulls a chainsaw out of its case and starts it up with a creepy, menacing look. The chainsaw chain begins to rotate with a characteristic mechanical roar. The protagonist holds it with one hand and heads towards the bandits. His appearance intimidates the criminals. The hero grabs the boss by the collar and says that's very brave of him. The man is startled too. The rest of the gang yells that the protagonist is a psychopath and offers to run away. The hero says in a creepy tone that it's too late to leave. He orders the bandits to give them everything they have, or he will cut off their heads. The boss panics and asks that the protagonist calm down and that they resolve everything peacefully over negotiations. The hero tells them to add him as a friend so he can look at their coin count. He sees that the bandit boss only has 38 coins. He laughs at him and says that he calls himself a boss when he can't even buy a ticket to the supermarket. Wang asks if the hero is afraid that the boss will come back to take revenge. The hero asks if he knows how to harvest Chinese green onions. Wang doesn't understand what this is about. He says that when harvesting this vegetable, you should leave small spines every season. The character says that everything was fine before the game came along, and now people are afraid to leave their homes. They enter the dormitory and see a girl at the entrance behind the counter. The hero says it's Ruby Lil, his landlord. Van blushes a little and says that Ruby Lil is a gorgeous woman. The protagonist tells Van that she is not only beautiful but also extremely dangerous, and advises him to stay away from this lady. Wang says he had some thoughts regarding Matthew Gu. Wang says a man once told him that if a man has a fat friend, an indifferent gentleman with glasses, casual encounters with actresses, and an attractive landlady, it can only mean one thing. Wang says that all of this points to Matthew Gu being the main character of the story. The hero himself gets annoyed and tells Wang not to talk nonsense. The hero looks at the interface window and says there's something new. The system asks everyone to go to Hadean to take part in the Lantern Festival dungeon. He reads that at the Feast of Lanterns, the blessings of ghosts will be presented in the form of lanterns. It is also stated that during the event, the Hadean area will be closed to entry for anyone without a ticket. Chu Chang-hae says this is done to encourage rivalry between players, saying the game likes to keep players interested in this way. Chu Chang-hae asks if the hero wants to participate. With the fact that it will be held in a month, the hero agrees since it's a way to improve his strength. Wang tells Matthew Gu to take him with him. He agrees, but he has a few more dungeons to go through. The hero thinks about the fact that he needs to make as much money as possible before the holidays and buy one thing. The next day, Wang and Chu Chang-hae try to track down the protagonist. Chu Chang-hae decided that the hero must have gone into the game to earn coins. The hero reads a message that all rewards have been upgraded by 1 level. He sees that it's a 5-player assignment, but there's no one here but him. The character says that the dungeon is like the movie Call, and all players are initially cursed here. Gradually, something creepy will approach the players. The hero hears the phone ringing. He walks over to him and picks up the phone. The other end asks if he is Matthew Gu. He agrees and deduces from the phone number that the person he is talking to is Hanks Ewan. His interlocutor asks if there is any notable place near him for them to find each other. They decide to meet near the sculpture. After a while, the hero comes to the statue. He sees several contestants there waiting for him. The players introduce themselves and give their names, Hanks Ewan and Molly Lin. The other members are Goldwing and Kevin, a linguistics student. The character introduces himself as Matthew Gu. He says he is a doctor. The others notice a guitar case and ask if he makes music. Hanks Ewan wants to talk about the game but notices something nearby. It seems to him that something is watching them from afar. The hero says it's getting dark and it's starting to get cold outside. Hanks Ewan says it's a dungeon with a curse and that the situation is similar to the movie The Call. They talk about how since they can't kill the ghost, they need to find another way. Hanks Ewan reassures everyone and says it will be easy on the first day, as the dungeon is designed to last a few days. They go back to their rooms for the night. A scream is heard from Matthew Gu's room. It turns out to be a monster that looks at the hero from the TV and yells at him. The hero stares at the monster on the screen and nonchalantly chews popcorn. Suddenly the picture stops and the hero frustratedly asks why everything is frozen. A knock is heard on the door of his room. The hero goes up to check what is there. He asks who came to see him, but no one answers. The knocking on the door does not stop. The hero looks through the peephole of the door. He peers through the peephole to see who is knocking on his door. He sees that there is no one on the hallway and the knocking stops. The hero says there's no one there and says he'll need a flashlight. The ghost's face on the screen watches him. Face whistles, watching his actions. The hero finally finds a flashlight, and the knocking on the door continues. He walks to the door. The knocking is still not over. The hero says he's about to see who's knocking on his door. He makes a scary face, using the light from the flashlight, and smiles sinisterly. Meanwhile, outside, night had fallen on the street. A loud slam is heard as someone closes the door. One participant says it's better there because with the door open, he felt like there was someone hiding in the darkness of the hallway. Suddenly the phone rings, which startles the guy and he cringes. He says he was nearly scared to death by the call. He gets a call from Molly Lin. She says she's scared because there's something under her bed. She is forced to speak in whispers and is afraid to check what is under the bed herself. Hanks assures her that everything is fine and that she should take a quiet look. She agrees to watch without getting off the bed. She startles when she sees something under her bed, her eyes widening with fear. She says on the phone that she saw someone's hand and hangs up. Hanks screams into the phone, worried about Molly Lin. The other participants watch as some creature appears in the hallway. Just as they try to get a glimpse, it disappears around the corner of the hallway. Another participant says that maybe it's not so bad and decides to call the others and see how things are going. He dials a phone number and waits for the call. He is startled when he hears that the line is busy and that he can't reach one of the participants. He decides to call Matthew Gu and dials his number. He picks up the phone and the guy is relieved that he's okay. He asks if Matthew Gu talked to Huang Yu because the line was busy. The character replies that he didn't and assumes it was a ghost. A low squeak is heard in the receiver and the guy asks what that sound was. Matthew Gu holds a ghost by the leg and says that the ghost from the movie The Call just crawled out of the TV. Matthew Gu is throwing down. Guy is cursing at the fact that it's only day 1 and already half the team is in danger. Another team member picks up the phone and asks who is calling him. The ghost chuckles ominously and tells him not to hang up or he'll die. He says he's at the bottom of his room. The boy looks down and to his horror he finds someone standing there. The guy freaks out and the voice starts counting down. The guy hears the sound of footsteps on the steps of the building. He drops the phone receiver out of fear. A voice is heard from the phone saying it's already behind him. A ghost appears behind the guy, ready to pounce on him. It's morning on location. In the morning, the main character wakes up, who is happy that he managed to sleep. A knock is heard at his door again. The hero jumps out of bed and says that he will definitely catch that ghost. He promises he'll tear the ghost to pieces, in anger over after the constant knocking on the door. The hero opens the door to the room. Hanks Ewan and the others are standing at the entrance. He says he's glad that Matthew Gu is okay, as he was scared when the connection broke. Hero asks if they should gather at the statue at 8 o'clock in the morning, but Hanks Ewan says he couldn't reach some of the band members. The hero assumes that if they can't be reached, but the ghost killed them during the night. Matthew heads forward and says they need to find out exactly what happened there. There are crows sitting on the roof and cawing. The characters walk down the hallway, scaring away the rats in the hallway. They open the door to the room of one of the participants. Hanks Ewan walks through the door and asks if Farron is here. They continue walking, calling out to Farron, looking around for members of the group. Behind one of the doors, they hear a loud rumble. They run into the room and see Farron lying on the ground. They see him murdered, improved by a telephone cord. The hero leans over him. He interrogates the person who called him. He asks if Farron could have been on the phone with the ghost at that moment. The participants become nervous about the hero's assumption of a ghost call. They say that death in the game doesn't really kill for real, but it looks creepy nonetheless. They say the game needs to end soon. Another participant suggests going to Molly's room. The hero goes to the phone and it makes a ringing sound which scares the guys. A participant nervously asks who it is calling. The hero picks up the phone and asks who it is calling. The girl on the other end says it's Molly. She sits in her room on her bed. They ask what happened to her. She says she saw a hand under the bed and dropped her phone, but she was afraid to go after it. She says she is very scared and asks him to come to her room. He agrees. She yells that something is moving around here and tells them to come soon. She yells about something coming out of there. Creepy laughter erupts from the tube. In addition to the main character, the participants are startled when they hear a creepy laughter coming from the tube. The hero tells her to stay put and that he's on his way to her. The others advise him not to go to her room as it is a guaranteed death. The hero says he likes it when ghosts are violent, and says he wants to try out a new weapon on him. The rest of us don't understand what the story is about, or what the hero is talking about. Some time passes after this conversation. The hero and the other two contestants enter the building. They try to dissuade the protagonist, telling him to think properly about his intention to go. The hero kicks open the door to Molly Lynn's room with his foot. There sits a girl who giggles nonstop. She says the hero has finally gotten here. She shows her creepy ghost face and laughs loudly. The hero feels disgusted by the monster. He removes the chainsaw case from his shoulder. The hero opens it with a loud click of the lock. He takes the chainsaw out of its case and puts it on his shoulder. A participant says it's not a guitar. Another notes that it's unclear now which one looks more intimidating, the ghost or Matthew Gu. The hero offers the ghost a dance by winding up his chainsaw. From behind the door to the room, the loud scream of a ghost is heard. One of the group points to the body in front of him. They are both very frightened. It turns out to be Molly's dead body. The guy says Molly is dead. He clamps his hands over his mouth in fear. He asks who the figure on the bed is then. They look at the bed, but it appears empty. A sound is heard from the side of the bed. The boy asks what the unusual noise is. They see flames ignite near Molly's body. The boys start to panic when they see the gruesome sight. The ghost in Molly's body rises and looks at the characters with a sinister smile. There is an explosion of flames appearing all around, and the guys close in, trying to cover themselves from the flames. One of them asks where the fire came from here. The flames engulf the entire room and set fire to the furniture. Wooden cabinets and shelves are on fire, filling the room with smoke. The boy notices that this isn't Molly's room and doesn't know where he is. He yells, asking where the others are. His partner appears from behind the burning furniture and yells to him that he's here. He says something fell on his leg. He says that something fell on his leg and he can't move. His partner runs toward him trying to help his friend. He asks if his partner Matthew Gu has seen him, but he says he hasn't. One of them asks where they ended up and why the place is on fire. The other replies that it is possible that this is the place where the ghost died. They stop in surprise when they see cracks in the ground from which a greenish light streams. In the midst of this green glow, they see a ghost. It stares at them predatorily. Guys get scared when they see a monster in front of them. The ghost begins to slowly creep toward the guys, who are frozen in place with fear. One asks what they should do. The other says he doesn't know, and adds that he would rather burn than be caught by that monster. The ghost attacks them, making a dash forward. She giggles as she does so. The creature's hair rushes forward and entangles the boys tightly, preventing them from moving. She laughs and says that she caught them. The ghost begins to crawl toward its prey. The guy makes a sound of pain and says they are about to die. He closes his eyes. Then there's a loud sound. The boy looks in that direction, surprised that he's still alive. He sees Matthew Gu, who is bent over and holding the ghost's head in his hands. He says he's a little late and apologizes for that. The boys rejoice at his arrival. Matthew Gu tells the ghost that he advises her to be a good person again, and to stop killing people. The guys are surprised that the protagonist is trying to talk the ghost down. She screams furiously that she will kill them all, and tries to break free from the protagonist's grip. The hero slams the ghost's head to the floor with force. Matthew Gu pulls out his chainsaw and starts starting it up. The hero angrily says the ghost's name in hell, swinging a chainsaw at her. He says he hopes she doesn't rest in peace. For a while, the hero furiously chops up the ghost's body with his chainsaw. The rest of the group is in shock. They can hardly believe that someone was able to kill a ghost using only their physical strength. A notification appears stating that the source of the curse has been eliminated, and the dungeon will end in 10 seconds. A countdown begins, after which the characters will be brought back to the real world. The dungeon is gradually being destroyed. The system counts down the seconds until the dungeon ends. Finally, the hero is brought back to his homeworld. He is pleased that the plaque did not appear this time. The hero sees the corpses of people in front of him. He reflects that the real world is slipping more and more into hell. He presses the button to check the results of the dungeon. It states that the dungeon can no longer function. It will only return to function after a long recovery process. The compensation is 1,000 coins. The hero opens the lottery menu and starts the lottery. As a prize, the main character receives a skein of wire. It can help in some situations, but it can break. The character assumes that this item may break at the time of her use. The hero sees a system announcement stating that a player rating table has been created. It takes a while for it to load. The hero waits for it to load. He sees his name at the top of the world's most wanted list. It doesn't specify the reasons for the search, but whoever can kill him will be sent a reward the size of a huge number of coins, 10,000. The hero thinks about the fact that he is surprised that he is hated to such an extent. He heads towards home and thinks about the fact that he's going to have a hard time now. In the real world, morning is coming. Chu Chang-hye asks if he's seen the world's most wanted list. The hero jokingly says that he would like to pick up the award for himself. Van says the hero is very odd. The hero looks at the system interface menu. Wang ponders that he could write a short story about an unfortunate man who is wanted. Chu Chang-hye says that he would like the main character to stay alive until then. The hero makes a pensive expression on his face, and Chu Chang-hye asks what's wrong. Matthew Gu replies that he's thinking about growing the wanted list and blowing up the world. Wang says that he's a very positive person to keep joking at such a difficult time. Matthew Gu replies that he is completely serious, which Wang didn't expect. The hero says he wants to go to the dungeon to gain points for the event. He invites his friends to go with him, and Wang and Chu Chang-hye agree. The hero says that he will surpass all the players who are trying to kill him. He thinks he needs to find something useful in the dungeon to stay alive. The three of them come to the cashier's booth where a young cashier is standing. The cashier asks the hero if he is Matthew Gu. The hero replies that he is, and that he wants a ticket to the group dungeon. The cashier says the dungeon doesn't want to do business with Matthew Gu. The hero smiles and says he will tell an interesting fact to the cashier. He grabs the cashier by the collar, and in a threatening tone of voice tells him that he's going to get what he wanted, and for the cashier to cut the crap and give him the ticket. The frightened cashier agrees to give the ticket. The hero takes it and lets the guy go. He politely thanks him for the ticket. The system writes that new team members will be added soon. The hero says that the number of players directly depends on the difficulty of the dungeon. They appear in the dungeon. There are spotlights burning which illuminate the scene. There's a sign that says they are at the circus. There are a few other people next to the characters looking at the stage where one person is standing. The interface states that there are 15 players. The hero thinks about the fact that there is no word on the page about the rewards and the purpose of the task. The person on stage does some hand clapping. It welcomes all players to a dungeon called Crazy Riddles. The man says he's the game's registrar and that there will be riddles to solve. 15 players will be divided into 5 teams of 3 players each. The player who answers will enter the cage. The players outside will then be given a word or phrase that they must convey to the player in the cage without using words or sounds. Not only words and speech, but lip reading is strictly forbidden. The player who answers may not peek at the board where the word is written. Otherwise, he and his team will be penalized. The player who answers may not peek at the board where the word is written. Otherwise, he and his team will be penalized. Wang says it's like normal games. Chu Chang-hye says it won't be easy to win. The host says that the teams are competing against each other. After 10 minutes, the team with the fewest points loses, and the cage of the answering player is opened from the back side. There is an evil ghost on the backside of the cages, so the losing player will be killed. The facilitator reminds that the whole team loses if the responding player dies. The team that wins the state will receive prizes, and their responder will receive double that amount. Next, the players are divided into teams. The protagonist Wang and Chu Chang-hye are gathered into one team. Other players also gathered in threes, forming teams. There are 5 groups in total, with 3 people in each group. Van asks who on their team will go to the cage and answer. The protagonist is sent to the cage. He says he has to be the responder and goes inside. The host reads the page with the information about the player who will respond. He announces that the responder will be Matthew Gu. Suddenly he remembers who Matthew Gu is and gets scared. He says he will have to take a long vacation after this. Players notice the main character and discuss that they can get a fortune for killing him. The facilitator encourages everyone to stay focused and choose the responding players on their teams. One of the teams looks confidently at the cages. One of their teammates is sent to the cage. He says hello and says his nickname is Wu Tianqi 257. The character says that he is very confident. A countdown of 3 seconds to the start of the competition begins. The responders in the cages are nervously waiting for the contest to begin. They stand in their cages until the game starts. Some of the participants behave confidently, but most are nervous. The host says that while they are competing, they can look at a clock that will tell them the time. The host snaps his fingers as the countdown reaches 0. He points to an object in front of him that emits a dark purple glow. The presenter says that it is a valuable and rare object. The clock starts and the host announces the start of the game. The hero stands in a cage and contemplates what word might appear now. Chu Changhe and Wang see the word on the whiteboard. Wang is very nervous. Van is frustrated by the difficulty of the word and doesn't know how to explain it with gestures. The hero asks how many words are in the puzzled phrase. Wang shows 4 on his fingers. The hero thinks that it might be a stable expression. Van is picturing a smile. The character thinks the word is probably related to laughter. Van continues to show laughter. The character guesses a variety of choices about laughing, smiling, energetic. Their opponents are trying to guess too. One of them smiles smugly. The other participants are desperate and don't know what the word riddle is. The host says that the time is half over. He reminds them that all guessers who fail will lose. Right now, all teams are in danger of losing. One of the guessers shouts out his word, a conspiracy. The host announces that the word has been guessed correctly. Chu Changhe points at himself with a finger and points downward with his other finger. The hero asks if the word is related to Chu Changhe when he was little. He recalls an episode from his childhood and says that the riddle word is Mona Lisa. The host congratulates the main character's team and says that the word was guessed correctly. Wang admires the protagonist for figuring it out. The protagonist thinks that the next riddles might be harder. The host announces that the team of the protagonist and Wu Tianyi 257 have gotten a point in this round, and the other teams have not advanced yet. There are 3 minutes to the end of the round. The hero prods his friends to show the next word as soon as possible. Both Wang and Chu Changhe look nervously at the word. The hero asks how many words are in the riddled phrase. Chu Changhe shows 10 fingers, but Wang only shows 7. The hero doesn't realize how many words he has to guess. The other participants say their first answer. The first team says the answer, the border of the opposing powers. The second team says to get up with the rooster. The third team is to put themselves in someone else's shoes. The host says that the teams that are behind have caught up with their opponents and are now all on the same level. The countdown begins. The guessers tense up and try to guess the words in the last seconds. Chu Changhe and Wang are nervous as they are almost out of time. The protagonist smirks smugly with only 4 seconds to go. The countdown is almost over. The host starts to announce the result of the competition. At the last moment, the hero calls the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs variant, and one of his opponents calls the Kaleidoscope variant at the same time. Wu Tianqi and the hero call each other mean. The host says that Wu Tianqi and Matthew Gu have defeated 3 opposing teams. The host says to the losing contestants to get ready for the doors to open now. The guessers in the cages scream for help, gripped by fear. They start screaming when the cage doors open, putting them within reach of the ghost. A monstrous hand grabs one of the losers and pulls him into the darkness as he yells. Eerie screams are heard from the darkness. The host says that none of the first 3 teams survived. He tells the contestants to play fair. He reminds them that the entire team is eliminated if the guesser loses and dies. Wu Tianyi says that he never thought the hero would have the same idea, and suggests that he become friends and help each other guess. The hero asks if he really wants to be friends with him, or if he just wants to find out his location in the real world and kill him, taking the bounty on the hero's head. The hero says he can't work with such a despicable ally. The hero replies that the hero is a hypocrite. The host says that tension is hanging between the teams, and that it is unknown who will win this round. The hero sees an incomprehensible black cloth. The black curtain effect is triggered, which his opponent activated with the item. A black curtain is an effect that can hide anything without allowing anyone to see what is behind it. The hero thinks about the fact that this is a game of riddles, and that the first priority here is not to guess, but to thwart the opponent. A black curtain covers a sign with a word to be guessed in the main character's cage. His team has reached a dead end. The protagonist tries to tear the curtain away. The protagonist's opponent says that it is useless and that he is now lost. The host says he's been outbid and now he's ready to start the next round again. With a second left in the second round, the hero reaches his hand into his opponent's cage. He tells him not to get excited ahead of time. To the great surprise of his opponent, the hero snatches the sign with the word to be guessed from his opponent's cage. Both teams are shocked by this move, except for Chu Changhe, who keeps his cool as always. Wu Tianqi says it's a rule violation, but the hero replies that otherwise they wouldn't have hung inside if it wasn't meant to be taken. Wu Tianqi tries to complain about the rules violation, but the announcer ignores him. The host says that the game has reached a dead end, and now even he doesn't know what the words were. Wu Tianqi offers to remove the curtain in exchange for his plaque and continue the game in the usual way. The hero coldly says that he does not agree to these terms. Wu Tianqi gets angry and asks if the protagonist wants everyone to lose at once. The facilitator comments on their dialogue. He asks whether they will be able to reach an agreement. Wu Tianqi says that Matthew Gu is a wanted man, and dying in this competition would be a serious handicap for him. Wu Tianyi says that for him, unlike the hero, death is not a serious threat. The hero says he will not die with him. Wu Tianqi looks at him in surprise, not understanding what the hero meant. The host announces that there are only 5 seconds left to finish. The host counts down the seconds until the contest is over. Wu Tianyi looks at the hero and doesn't understand why he is still so calm. The host counts down the last second, which ends the competition. The second round ends and a door opens in the hero's cage. A creepy monster appears behind the hero's back with an eye visible in the palm of his hand. The ghost has big sharp fangs. It makes a predatory sound. The monster begins to gradually creep up on the protagonist. Wu Tianqi is pretty telling that he will die later than the main character and that he will see him die. The ghost that had gotten to the protagonist suddenly stopped. The monster silently observes the character for a while. The protagonist nonchalantly stares directly into the eyes of the monster. The ghost gets scared and starts crawling away from the protagonist. Wu Tianqi is surprised and doesn't understand why the ghost came back again. A bad monster appears behind Wu Tianqi. The hero says that he has sorted out his affairs already. The ghost attacks Wu Tianqi, tearing him apart. As he dies, he shouts that this isn't the end, and that he will still find Matthew Gu. The hero waits, and gradually the noise from the direction of his opponent's cage subsides. The hero asks the host if the game is already over. The host says it's their blunder that they didn't hire backup ghosts from other dungeons for just such an occasion. The host announces that the game is then over, and that their team wins the competition. The announcer says that this is the 4th game of this game, and they are the winners of Game 4. The character thinks about the fact that the host realizes that there were previous games, hence his memory is not reset every time. The cage opens and the hero walks out of the cage to his team. Suddenly he sees Wang and Chu Changhe notice something and are surprised. He doesn't understand why they are so surprised. The hero assumes something has appeared on the board and turns around to look, but doesn't have time. When he looks there, the writing is already gone, and he doesn't have time to read it. Wang said that someone's name was written there, but it disappeared too quickly and he didn't have time to read it. Chu Changhe didn't have time to read it either. The host tells them to pick up their prizes as soon as possible. 2 items for Matthew Gu and 1 each for the other team members. The host says they can choose any item from those on the table, as well as anything he found in the dungeon. On the table lies a variety of little things of all sorts. The host says that they will only be able to see the descriptions and abilities of the items after they have already left the dungeon. Wang says he wants to take the coins. Chu Changhe takes a blue piece of paper. The hero considers the items, wondering what to get. He sees a creepy-looking statue of a non-topus with eyes glowing red. This statue adorns a large portal. The host says they can leave this place by simply walking through the portal. He warns that the portal will take all their items if they take more than they are due. A character asks if they can take any number of items. The host answers that yes, they can. The hero says that he remembers that there was a watch there. The host says that it is not a reward and that it belongs to him. The hero says that he understands and that he has no choice. He takes an unexpected leap forward. The host says he's glad the hero understands, but doesn't have time to finish as the hero pounces on him. He grabs the host and jumps into the portal with him. Wang and Chu Changhe are shocked by the main character's decision. Wang wonders if it will work, but Chu Changhe thinks it will. Chu Changhe says that they can take their time, and that there will be prizes waiting for compensation. The portal appears in the middle of a real-world street, near the cash register from where the heroes traveled to the dungeon. The cashier is surprised to see someone coming out of there. He is even more surprised when he realizes that it's the dungeon host, who is being carried by Matthew Gu while slung on his shoulder. A presenter named Mr. Green is extremely surprised when he realizes where he's ended up. The cashier says that unfortunately Mr. Green arrived earlier than expected. Mr. Green asks to be brought back. The cashier says they don't bring non-player characters back. Matthew Gu thinks about their words, and the fact that the character didn't disappear from the dungeon exit. Matthew Gu says he can't leave since he is his reward for going through the dungeon. Mr. Green tells him to let him go. Mr. Green offers him his watch. The hero says that under certain conditions, he is willing to make some concessions. A watch is a special item that allows you to save your years of life into an archive, and then return to the previous saved age. The hero is excited that this item will help him survive. The system analyzes and then says that he is incompatible with this item. He asks Mr. Green if the watch is a fake. He angrily replies that it is not, and for the hero to finally leave. The cashier says that a notice has arrived from the game organizer. Mr. Green asks if he will be moved to another dungeon. It turns out to be a notice that says his dungeon has suspended its activities due to the absence of a host. Mr. Green is horrified to think of it. After a while, the heroes come to the entrance of the supermarket. Chu Chang-hae says that the watch, which is called an archive, won't save him from death. The hero asks to keep it for him. Van asks why they decided to drive at night. The hero says they can't drive during the day. They come to a salesperson who is overwhelmed. The vendor eagerly asks if they want to look at the vehicles, and greets the characters. He points to the hearse. Chu Chang-hae says that now it's becoming clear why the hero doesn't want to ride during the day. The seller says the hearse doesn't need fuel and that it can reach tremendous speeds. He explains that such a car can be placed in the inventory and stored that way. The hero asks how many inventory cells the hearse will occupy in this way. The salesman replies that 3 boxes. The hero says he agrees to buy it. The seller asks if he is sure. The salesman reads that the main character is stupid because he doesn't have a license for the car. Suddenly, he notices that the hearse has started to drive. He watches in amazement as the car drives away. The vendor swears when he remembers it's the player who was in that dungeon. The heroes drive down the road on a hearse, developing a huge speed. Van glances nervously at the road, afraid the hero is going to crash somewhere. He yells for the hero to keep his eyes on the road and be sharp. The protagonist tells him to hold on tight and accelerates even harder. Van screams as the car jumps into the air. Hero and Chu Chang-hae remain unfazed, but Wang screams with all his might. He says he's going to die so soon. The hearse lands with a loud thud against the road. With a series of supernaturally large jumps, the machine moves across rooftops. By dawn, they arrive at their destination. They read the description of the festival event. Entrance to the area where it is taking place will be blocked to anyone who has not bought tickets. The hero says that the festival will start in 20 days, and that they'll need to find a box office that sells appropriate tickets. Chu Chang-hae says they need to go into the city as there's a greater chance of finding a cash register in densely populated areas. The hero tells Van to put the car away as they are going for a walk. The one is ogled. A trio of characters are walking through the city. There is no one around them. They hear the pounding of their own footsteps and the whistling of the wind. Chu Chang-hae notes that the city is too quiet, and that he doesn't like it. They say the city looks dead. A greenish aura can be seen around the city. The heroes are walking through a putchy town. There is not a soul around, even animals and birds are absent. Wang asks why it's so quiet. Chu Chang-hae suggests that people are too scared to leave their homes. Chu Chang-hae says there are cars and dead bodies lying neatly on the street. He's sure someone is keeping order in this place. The hero suggests going to the ticket kiosk. Van suddenly notices something. He yells out that there are people here. They see a police squad in front of them. The police officers ask what they are doing outside the house. The policeman notices that judging by their clothes, they are not from around here. He says he is the sheriff of this town and the heroes give their names. Chu Chang-hae gives the hero's last name. The hero himself is silent. Chu Chang-hae says they were passing through here and decided to stop by. He asks why the locals are afraid to go outside. The policeman says they shouldn't register here, as there is an open dungeon that randomly appears here occasionally. Van asks if this dungeon is really that scary. The sheriff replies that everyone who entered it died. He says that there are a lot of crazies out there, and that the heroes are lucky they didn't get there. He asks them to leave. The hero starts to talk about leading, but Chu Chang-hae interrupts him. An interface window appears in front of the heroes, and they are transported to the dungeon. This is a special professional dungeon of high difficulty level. You need 50 players or more to get started. Van asks if this dungeon sends 100 players to slaughter. The hero reads that in the dungeon, all players will be divided into higher and lower classes, and all lower-class players will be killed for insulting the higher class. The character waits until the dungeon adds new players and loads. Finally, the download ends and the hero says the dungeon begins. The character appears in a seat next to other people, chained to the... Thus there are 32 people there. The character cannot move. He sees that the person sitting next to him is a non-player character, since he has no information about the player. A man shows up and says they are all players. He is called a murderous professor and says that they are all sinners and belong to the lower class. The sitting people are frightened of the man. The presenter says it reduces crime among the lower class. A man comes up to the presenter and says the cameras are ready. These cameras have a panoramic lens and can show everything the player sees. The host says that they are approaching the restricted area and that he's glad they'll be parting ways soon. A transference occurs and the hero hears a loud sound. The hero's handcuffs have opened. He doesn't understand what happened, as the others still have them closed. The speed increases, and the hero's chair flies out of the structure. The protagonist takes off and begins to fly downwards rapidly. He falls to the ground from a great height and makes a sound of pain. He thinks of it as a cruel way to divide the players, overseeing the hero through the camera. The observer in front of the monitor says the protagonist has a calm demeanor, but he's sure he'll break sooner or later. The hero starts walking down the street towards the buildings. It is late at night outside. He finds a map of the mining town. He notes that it is a very large and dangerous place, and that he should find a weapon. He ponders where Wang and Chu Chang-hae have gotten to. Wang sits on the ground in despair. Behind Van, the door behind him opens with a creak. A creepy ghost appears there. Van looks at it with fear.